Story 11. Growing up a secondhand son. I come from a broken family. My dad and mom divorced when I was young, and my mom married my stepdad about 10 months later. He wasn't a bad guy, but I was never close to him since I already had a dad. My mom had my younger sisters with my stepdad, starting a year into marriage. I was angry that my mom left my dad, and she knew it. I lived with my mom but had visitation with my dad regularly. My mom tells me dad left, but my extended family made it clear that wasn't the case. The careful way it was conveyed was that my mom had met my stepdad and left him. Anyway, my mom would always tell me that I didn't need to see my dad on holidays he had granted to him. I wanted to spend time with my dad, so I would ignore her and go anyway. I don't see any problems with seeing my dad, regardless of my mom's feelings. I was never rude to her and never fought with her over it, but I could tell it made her upset. Fast forwarding to my mid-teens when my dad died in a car accident. My mom refused to go to his funeral and tried to stop me from going. I again ignored her and got a ride from my aunt. My mom never said anything to my face, but I heard her once tell my stepdad that she finally didn't have to deal with me going to see him. My mom never knew how much this hurt me. I love both of my parents, but my dad was the one who always took the high road. He never once said anything bad about my mom. He never remarried, and there was always a picture of him, my mom, and me when I was a baby hanging on his bedroom wall. My mom was so buried in her new family that she seemed to forget me during some family events, literally. There was a time when we were taking a family vacation that required flying, and she forgot to book a flight for me. My stepdad came out of his office the day before the vacation, holding everyone's boarding pass except mine. He had a confused look on his face and asked my mom why she didn't book a ticket for me. My mom asked him what he was talking about, so he showed her the boarding passes he had printed after checking them into the flight. She said there must be some mistake, but he told her that he had double-checked and there were only tickets for them and my sisters. He told her that he looked and there were no more seats on the flight. Then he told her the only way we could all go was if we booked me on a different flight. My mom got annoyed and said she'd book another flight for her and me. She claimed that she was in a hurry and must have forgotten. It was too late to refund her airfare, and buying 2 last-minute seats on a different flight would cost a fortune. She did apologize to me, and I could tell she was embarrassed. But come on, she forgot me. I just walked back to my room and slammed the door. I slammed that door so hard it damaged the door jamb. Eventually, my stepdad came to me and told me that he would book the flight and ride with me. I was crying, but told him not to worry, and that I would be okay at home. He started to object, but I asked him if he thought this would be a good vacation if I went. He looked at me and didn't say anything, but shook his head. He then said they were going for a week, and he would go to the store that night with me, and we'd buy all the food I wanted. He also handed me $200 and said I could use that for pizza or anything I wanted for delivery. Like I said, my stepdad wasn't a bad guy, but wasn't my dad. Honestly, he was probably a better parent than my mom. That was the first night I overheard them arguing. Mom came to see me later that night to apologize, but it was weird and awkward. She asked if I wanted to stay home, and I told her I was old enough to be okay for a week. It was summer, no school, and I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft then, so I knew what my week would be like. My stepdad and mom called me every day to see if I was okay. My mom was always short, like she was ready to hang up the phone. When they returned, my mom told me she was embarrassed and asked me not to tell people what had happened. Another time was Christmas. We went to my grandparents' house for the holiday and had a wonderful time for a couple of days leading up to Christmas. We have a ritual where kids open one present on Christmas Eve and the rest on Christmas morning. This stretches out the fun and anticipation. As a teenager, I wasn't as excited as my siblings, constantly sitting by the tree. But I was shocked when my youngest sister brought me a present and said, "Well, there are only 2, so open this one. It's heavy." Then she said she hoped Santa would bring me more. There was dead silence in the room as my grandparents looked at my mom. The present that my sister had brought me was the present from them. My stepdad looked at my mom and asked her to come with him to help him with something. I was super embarrassed and put the present from my grandparents back under the tree. I told my sisters that I wanted to wait until morning. They were disappointed but said, okay, and that they would wait too, then put their presents back. I looked at the other present with my name, which was from my stepdad. The house was super quiet, and my grandparents were whispering to each other when I heard my stepdad's raised voice. I could hear them when he asked, how could she look at herself in the mirror when she didn't get anything for her son for Christmas? Then I heard my mom saying something back in a hushed voice. This continued for a few minutes, and my stepdad exited the bedroom. He looked at my grandparents and said he needed to go out for some last-minute shopping for dinner tomorrow. My mom followed him out of the room as my stepdad opened the door and left. My stepdad slammed the door in her face as my mom grabbed her coat and started putting her shoes on. It took about 3 hours before my stepdad returned with a couple of bags. My grandparents did not speak to my mom that night. They just gave her angry looks. I returned to the room I was staying in and locked the door. It was my grandfather's office, and I was sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor. That was cool, and I'd done that for so long that it was normal. My grandfather had a lot of cool stuff in his office, and I loved being there. My mom came to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. She knocked on the door and called my name several times, then started knocking harder. Ultimately, she demanded that I open the door, but I heard my grandma tell her to leave me be. My sisters were already in bed, so they didn't overhear my grandfather telling my mom he was seriously ashamed of her. My mom got upset and defensive, saying she had presents for me, but they must have been left at the house when the car was packed. I can tell you for a fact that everything that was under our Christmas tree was put into the trunk of our car. There weren't any other presents at my house. My mom was lying. She forgot me again. There are more examples, but some are pretty embarrassing. The most embarrassing thing that happened was when she would forget my birthdays. This happened multiple times. There's nothing more hurtful than your mother not remembering that. It made me feel truly alone. Another example is that she forgot me regularly when ordering food for home delivery. I can't say she always forgot me because sometimes she would order pizza. She also missed every football game I had during my junior and senior years. My stepdad made it to all of them. She didn't forget the games, she simply decided not to come. The final straw was my graduation ceremony from high school. She forgot to order my cap and gown, and I had to scramble and borrow one from a friend who graduated the previous year. My tassel had the wrong year on it. It was pretty embarrassing, but my friends laughed it off and thought it was cool that I had a different year. She also missed my graduation ceremony. I wore a gold gown since my GPA was straight A's all 4 years. I earned several awards that were given out for academic achievement and more for sports. As you can probably guess, my stepdad was in the stands, but my mom got hung up at the office and didn't come in until after the ceremony. She ran up to me, congratulating me, but since the ceremony was over, many other kids with their families had left. My stepdad gave my mom the stink eye and asked me if I wanted a ride home. My mom glared back at him. I thanked him, but decided to celebrate with my girlfriend Molly. He smiled, said, "Okay," and reached out to shake my hand. I laughed when he palmed me $100. He hugged me and told me to have fun and be safe. My mom came to hug me, but she could tell I was upset. I want to point out that my mom never works late. She gave me this super defensive look and started to say something about why she was late, but I interrupted her and said not to worry and that I knew where I stood on her importance list. I turned and walked away. I left the house for college later that summer and never looked back. I stayed in touch with my siblings and stepdad, but never spoke to my mom during my undergrad years. I stayed away from the house during major holidays, going to Molly's parents' house instead. My sisters told me Mom never spoke about me or seemed to miss me during the holidays. Molly and I were lucky enough to attend the same college. We were engaged during our junior year and married as soon as we graduated. I sent my parents an invitation but didn't expect them to come. Guess what? Yep, my stepdad came without my mom. She was upset with me for going no contact over the last 4 years. I find this funny because she never tried to contact me even once. I just accepted that she hadn't loved me from an early age. I know I reminded her of my dad, since she often commented that I was just like him during conversations. I believe this was the catalyst for her behavior. I'm currently in my master's program for electronic engineering, and Molly just had our first son. We plan on having many more. Unfortunately, my stepdad passed away from a heart attack about 2 months before Molly gave birth. I was devastated. For so long, he was truly the only parent I had. He was there for me when my mother wasn't, every single time a parent should be. I never realized how much he meant to me until he passed. I did see my mom at the funeral, and she was also mourning his death. I swallowed a lot of pride, hugged her, and told her I was sorry for her loss. She invited me to the house for a family gathering, and Molly and I agreed to attend. I got to see my sisters. They are 2 smart and beautiful young women. We spent a lot of time talking about babies. My sisters are old enough to understand what transpired between my mom and me and gave their take on things she did to me. It was a pleasant afternoon chatting with my sisters, and Molly and I left before it got awkward with my mom. My sisters and I get along great, just to be clear. My maternal grandparents passed away a year or so later, within a month of each other. My sisters are less than a year apart and plan to attend the same university together. My mom has run out of family and started contacting us more often. I still have my pain from how she treated me, and I don't think that will ever go away, but I won't let that drive my life. I've been willing to let my mom back into my life, but I can tell she knows that I'm still hurt about how she treated me. Molly caught her crying one time when she was visiting. Molly sat with her, and she eventually admitted to Molly that she was horrible to me. After seeing the life I had built and the love we shared in our family, she was ashamed of herself. I'm unsure how to process that right now. Someday I may be able to forgive her for the way she treated me, at least I hope so. I love my mom, but I will never forget that I was a second-hand son. I only post new and unique content. Please like and subscribe for more.